So Molly, directly, moving on to the topic, right, which is PLG motion, and audience here are curious to learn about, uh, curious curious to learn about you and your experience so far. So my first question is, if we break down the topic, right, like today's topic, what according to you drives growth for B2B SaaS companies, and how important the role of product amongst all other factors, right? Like people talk about SLG, PLG.
Yep.
What's your take on this change in approach in the B2B industry over the time?
Yeah, I mean, product is so central to this, right? If
Exactly.
you don't have a solid product experience, and it doesn't mean it has to be, fully solving every use case, every customer problem, but having a solid product experience, if that's not there, really all the efforts you put into in driving demand, I feel like
Mhm.
get lost. And
Okay.
so, I'll be honest, like we've been
Yeah.
learning a lot as DevRev about this, and we are not experts yet for sure. But one thing that I've definitely witnessed is, even if you have a really deep product, if that product journey is also not clear to the user and you're driving demand, driving interest in your platform, it's hard for people to get to that time to value in a way and in a duration that they're going to find acceptable, right? People's attention spans are much shorter. And so having your product be able to really find that those areas of opportunity for our user really quickly is really important. And I would say growth is driven no matter what function you're in by really simple and great customer experiences, no matter if you're SLG or PLG. And
Mhm.
so, these days I find I'm curious, Avinash, for you, if you guys notice the same thing, but people don't want a heavy touch. Um,
Yes.
it's very rare that people want to like sit in these long meetings and do these long demos. They want to touch, they want to feel, they want to see what the experience is like themselves.
Exactly.
It's hard enough sometimes to get people in a virtual meeting, let alone in
Yeah.
person. And so that's
Yeah.
where I think, like, again, this role of PLG can be very complementary to many other go to market motions as well.
Mhm. Got it. Very interesting. And only a follow on to that, right? Like, let's say if there are a couple of companies who are heavily dependent on SLG motion and they want to migrate into PLG side, right? What are the steps and what is the framework they should look after, right? Like, what do you suggest? How do you recommend? Let's say Sprouts, just taking an example for the sake of it. Let's say we are a very SLG led company and we want to migrate or move our motion to PLG. What all things we should take care of and how we should proceed? Like, what should day zero looks like for us? Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think the thing I always try to remind people is like it's not all or nothing, right? You don't have to be 100% PLG or SLG. And for me, it's really like that foundational definition of PLG is letting people try, and so what does that look like for your company on day zero? It doesn't have to be year 3 of what the trial looks like, but what is it that you want someone to be able to experience about your product in
Mm-hmm.
those first 5 minutes?
Hmm.
And how do you bring that experience to them? And it doesn't necessarily have to be that you open the floodgates and you let anyone into your product. So maybe it's like loosening a gating process, right? Maybe right now you only can get a login if you are assigned, on a signed agreement with a company. Maybe there's a way that you allow people to learn more about your product, or even engage with your team in a different way that's a little lower touch. So I think
Hmm.
there's a lot of ways you can kind of ease into it if you're looking to make that shift.
Got it. Got it. A quick question on that, Molly. In your experience, right? Like, the one challenge which PLG companies usually come across is, there is a lot of customers who sign up for a product, but they not eventually translate into a paying customer,
Right.
right? So can you recommend a few best practices which you have seen, which have worked really well for you, like how a freemium customer can be converted into a paid customer. Obviously there is a journey. Companies like prospect visit the website, they sign up for a freemium, use the product, but eventually, right, the monetization happens once they start paying.
Yeah.
And what are some of the best practices there?
Well, I'll tell you, we're still figuring this out too, right? Like we have thousands and thousands of users on DevRev, in various degrees of activity. And
Mhm.
that's one of the things that I think is one of those like golden keys is if you're not looking deeply at activity and you don't know what those events are that are really indicators of someone that's maybe ready to take that next step, you're never going to be able to think about and drive conversion differently. And again, people want a lower touch model in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of customers that don't ever want to talk to somebody, but do want to be led down maybe a path. And so, how do you use usage data and event data about what's happening with a group or a cohort within your product to tell you when and how to reach out? And so we keep getting smarter and smarter about this, or trying different things, testing out different methodologies, even different organizational like structures and who needs to be doing what, as we've evolved and grown as a company. And so how you use that data and then drive the right motions, either from your product with low touch or no touch, or then you figure out by data enrichment and things like this, like who you actually want to try to take a heavier handed approach with. That's where you really can start to see things come together quickly.